Yes, Dan Brinson, D-A-N-B-R-I-N-S-O-N, and I'm the section manager for Department of Fish and Wildlife, the Wildlife Conflict Management and Prevention Program.
Okay. When did you officially start in that position?
I started June 1 of this year.
Okay, so new.
I'm brand new, yes.
Okay. What was it like? Can I just ask you what it was like coming into this program? It's not just the bear program that you're dealing with, right? I mean, wildlife conflict is a really heavy task to deal with. How does it feel to be the guy in that position right now?
It was, I'd like to say overwhelming, but it was exciting in that there is just so many different issues going on around the state, and each one comes with so much, passion and debate and diverse views on whether it's the elk population damaging crops in Skagit Valley or causing vehicle collisions on I-90 and in Ellensburg, or the bear timber damage program, or the wolves, which take up a huge amount of my time, with all the issues that surround that, and then there's that's just the top four that come to my mind.
Can I ask you specifically, you were coming in, I think, Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, but our stories aired at the beginning of July, I believe. So you were kind of coming in at the same time.
I came right in the middle of your stories, yes.
So what were your thoughts when you saw the reports? What did you think?
Well, I thought I have got my work cut out for me. Me and my team here at headquarters, as well as all the conflict specialists out in the field.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel the process has gone, all that work that you realized you had to do? How's it going so far?
Slower than I had hoped. I had hoped that, I realize it's only been 6 months, but I had hoped that we would have some meetings already under our belt with the various stakeholders that are, that are associated with this issue.
Mm-hmm.
However, I am making progress, or we are, in putting those meetings together in a collaborative way that hopefully will result in a program that that everybody has had a hand in developing, and certainly there'll be some compromise by each party, but it'll be something that they have developed and will be able to accept and realize that that's the that the ultimate product will be the best program that we can implement that satisfies the needs of all the parties involved.
There's some concern that the process is moving so slowly that we won't see change for the next season. Are you concerned about that? And if so, what's holding up the process? What are some of the challenges that you face?
The challenges right now are logistics. We have solicited for a bid for a facilitator, to be a neutral facilitator, in order to bring the different stakeholders together and sort out the differences of opinions and beliefs and concerns, and to sort of vet out people's perceptions, whether real or perceived, but to be able to bring all the groups together at the same time, so that we can move forward in developing this process. Now, the process in getting the facilitator itself has been fairly lengthy, with preparing the bid, put the bid out. We didn't get anybody to respond. We've tried internally, and though we've had a little bit of interest, it's a workload issue for one of our own employees to be that facilitator. Plus, we would rather have somebody completely unbiased to walk us through this process. So it's just been time. I came on in June, right in the middle of the bear damage program, right in the middle of the wolves, and when the ranchers turn their cattle out onto the allotments, where then the wolves become an issue because they're on the same landscape as the cattle. Just a number of things. I don't want to make any excuses, but I basically, when I came into this situation, was right in the peak of the activity. Now we're just in that period of time where we can take maybe a breath and get it done. And if it takes time, it's worth that time because we want to make sure that we get it right.
I can understand that. I would counter by saying, though, that there has been criticism over the past that it's taken a lot of time prior to your arrival, and we still have a program that has a considerable amount of questions that need answering. So how do you, as the new guy, say, I'm going to make sure that the time goes towards something instead of what I've seen in some of the documents I've gotten, which is a whole lot to do about nothing, that there's just more meetings and more meetings, but nothing ever changes. That's definitely a frustration I've seen. So how do you take it in a different direction and use that time purposefully and efficiently?
Well, first off, I'll accept that criticism, and it frustrates me too. However, like I said, if it takes time to do it right, then we're going to slow down and take that time. And it does take time to organize so many different groups of people that represent different views on the subject, and it takes time to go through the process of getting the right facilitator. It just, like I say, it frustrates me too. But if it takes some time, if we end up next season during the damage season having only made some improvements while we work on larger issues, then that's what we'll do. But I want to do it right.
Let's talk about the facilitator real fast. Why did you guys decide that having a facilitator was necessary?
Well, when we looked at the efforts that we did a couple, 3 years ago, we realized that while we involved all the parties, we sort of went around to each party to get their input, to discuss how to move forward, but we never really sat at the same table all together so that we could understand each other's points of view, brainstorm different types of options.
Keep it transparent among the groups?
Thank you, keep it transparent. And so we looked at what we've done with the Wolf Advisory Group, where we have a facilitator, a neutral facilitator that's specialized in bringing groups together to collaborate in a true transparent effort to develop a program that has been developed by the parties concerned. And so when we looked at how successful that we believe our Wolf Advisory Group has been, we wanted to do something that mirrored that program.
Okay. I'm going to switch it to this cooking oil issue.
Okay.
That's okay? When Andy tells me it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yep.
Okay. So I don't think I need you to go into what happened, because I think I pretty much understand it. Plus, I could call you and make sure that the documents it. But so briefly, what I understand is, you have this guy who has been in the program for quite some time, and he, according to George, who I talked to a few weeks ago, has for years been adding cooking grease to tree stumps to bait the bears in for supplemental feeding purposes, saying that they are not going to be able to find the feeders if they don't have some kind of attractant. He felt like it was a non-issue. Obviously, you can't remove cooking grease once you put it in a tree, and so he told me that, well, how are they supposed to attract these bears in with grease and take it out when the hunt starts? And that was a question that for him felt unfair. But then, of course, you look at the law, or the rules, I guess, in the program, where you're not supposed to have bait out while you're hound hunting, right?
Correct.
So then you see this conversation from one of the enforcement officers about taking it to the prosecutor's office and responding that they won't take the case because of what, I guess. And that's the first question I have for you is, Why didn't this guy get in trouble? He was breaking the rules.
Well, I haven't talked to the prosecutor, but from my understanding of that case and the photographs that I saw, the question became an issue of, is our permit so vague that we can't delineate what a lure scent is to what the supplemental feeding program is supposed to be? And while a lure scent in common terms is usually like a beaver carcass or some artificial scent or some insignificant amount of material that's placed there to lure the animal into the actual bait, we don't in our current permit really define a lure scent, or for that matter really define exactly what the supplemental feed is supposed to be.
Are either one of those allowed out when you're hound hunting?
No.
Is a lure scent allowed out or supplemental feed? So if you
bait,
find it one way or the other, should either of them
bait
been allowed?
is not allowed out. And a lure scent, just by its common definition, is something that is meant to attract bears. The supplemental feeding station is supposed to be a means of providing nutrition to the bears during that short period of time between when they emerge from their dens in the spring and when the more nutritious berries and such.
But are either of them allowed out when you're hound hunting?
No.
So why was it so confusing for the enforcement of that particular case?
Well, like I say, I didn't talk to the prosecutor, but from what I understand, the prosecutor felt that the provisions were vague enough where he wasn't comfortable prosecuting.
In one of the emails that I have from Brad Roden, he says that the issue, it seemed to be at the center of it, is that the packet itself contains baiting protocol in the hound hunting permits.
Right.
So that you could argue potentially that you gave me baiting protocol in my hound hunting permit, so how was I supposed to know I wasn't allowed to do it?
Right.
Which I think probably most hound hunters know.
Right. The permit package is the same package whether you're applying for the use of hounds or for snare or for master hunter removal. So all the material comes together. That is something we could fix here if we thought that it causes so much confusion. I read through the permit and the verbiage actually just this morning again, and it's pretty clear each section of what they're referring to. But if it causes confusion, it causes confusion. As far as that being a reason for a prosecutor to accept or not accept a case, I don't know. I know that Fish and Wildlife Crimes right now we have a very difficult time getting prosecutors in any county to really give them their due diligence because they're so swamped. So you bring a case to a prosecutor that has a little bit of confusion, it probably doesn't make the priority list when they're dealing with the other, crimes against human beings and such.
If I was a hunter who is not part of the bear timber program and I did something like that,
right,
would I have the same kind of confusion or protection to escape prosecution of that? If you were just some bear hunter and you dumped cooking oil into a tree stump and you were caught, would you face stricter consequences because you're not sort of protected by what you said is the confusion over supplemental feeding? In other words, did this guy get special treatment? I
would hope that the more blatant a violation, the more serious a prosecutor's office would take that, and the prosecutor has to look at the whole, the entirety of the circumstances around each case. But I would like to see any person who is deliberately violating our rules to be prosecuted to the fullest extent.
What if they feel like they're not breaking rules because the rules are unclear?
I really don't know how to answer that. I can't place myself in that person's position.
Well, you said yourself that there's some debate over supplemental feed and these scent lures, and what even is supplemental feed is not defined by the state. So, you know, like you said, and you come from an enforcement background, and I'm sure, well, I mean, I'm curious actually, like, the frustration that came out in my last report, is that something that you saw when you were a captain or not? Do you think that was unfair? Do you feel like people think the program is enforceable?
I think the program has been less than perfect for...
Say that one more time.
I think that the program has been less than perfect for a long time. And I think that the department, when I was in enforcement and now, I have worked at trying to improve it. It's a program anchored in time, and it's been an uphill battle to make those improvements, just because it's, you know, it's political. It has a economic effect on the timber companies. It involves groups that have a lot of lobbying power, and it's a difficult situation, like many situations when you deal with wildlife conflict.
The whole debate over supplemental feed and bait during a hound hunt, is that a serious issue that needs to be addressed in your immediate future?
In my opinion, yes. Yes, that is a kind of a root, kind of a base question. Does supplemental feeding work? Does supplemental feeding attract bears into the stand of timbers that you don't want a bear in? Or does supplemental feeding do just what some of the research has suggested, and that is carry that bear nutritionally through a period of time until its native food or its natural foods are available?
When you were saying that you would want to see anyone who's breaking the rules held accountable to that, I know there's frustration. There's frustration about that, and I think in this particular case, which again you started, I think after this was all going on anyway, a few weeks, right? There's frustration I've come across that if you can't prosecute a guy who's dumping cooking oil into tree stumps, who can you prosecute in this program? And is it just a waste of time for enforcement officers to make a case against hunters in this program who maybe are a minimal amount of rule breakers, but really I don't know if the issue that they're so upset about is the rule breakers or a systemic problem of bad rules. So, you know, how do you address that staff frustration where you have people who I've, you know, seen in these documents just feeling kind of demoralized that there's just no point in going after these people anymore because they don't get in trouble?
I think I would have been in enforcement for 30 years, day after tomorrow, and there have been many times where myself or my team has brought very blatant violators to the prosecutor's office, or, you know, into the system seeking justice, and sometimes it doesn't happen. And we all know that about the criminal justice system. It's not perfect, but it's probably the best system in the world. But having said that, that does not or should not affect the drive or the willingness of our staff to continue in our efforts to protect wildlife and to manage in a responsible way. So I guess what I would say to the frustrated staff is, yes, I feel the frustration as well, and we need to keep moving forward and not dwell on maybe past mistakes or past acquiescence, but rather look forward to what we can do to change it in the future. And that's what we're setting out to do now.
And so as it specifically relates to this case, do you think that regardless of whether the rules are clear or unclear about supplemental feeding or bait, do you think that cooking grease in a tree stump during a hound hunt goes against the spirit of this program?
I do.
There have been a lot of, I'm sure, well-meaning people who have sat in your chair before.
Yes.
And obviously they've had a really tough time. And I have to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're not necessarily, have malicious purposes or anything. It's just as complicated as people say it is. I'm sure that's true. So how do you make a difference? If there have been all these other well-meaning people who have sat in your seat before you, how do you go at this differently to make a change?
I'm hoping that the key to success is by seeing what success we did have in the Wolf Advisory Group process, in that collaboration of stakeholders. And I'm hoping that that is the one method that maybe hasn't been fully executed in the past, and maybe that's why we continue to keep having these issues come up, and that's why the slow change. So bringing all groups together at one time in a transparent, public, and collaborative process is my hope that that's the difference in what we hope to bring to the table compared to what has been tried in the past.
What's at stake if it doesn't ever change?
Trust from the public, trust from the stakeholders that the Department of Fish and Wildlife is doing its job in professionally managing our resource and being the steward that we're supposed to be over the wildlife resources that the state enjoys.